Like when I start doing porn, I'm literally the most popular straight star. I think 5 scenes are the most I did in a day. You know, after me doing 1,000 scenes, you have to disassociate yourself from reality to do that.
Hey, my name is Rocco Reed.
What's up, guys? My name is Rocco Reed.
Former porn star Rocco Reed, whose real name is Joshua Broome.
You're trying to manage how much semen, your body's producing. Guys almost exclusively are taking erectile dysfunction medications. The women are using some kind of lubricant, sometimes numbing cream. It's like once you compromise what you would say yes to, it's just like, what does it matter? The further you go down the rabbit hole of doing those things, the more you leave yourself open to being willing to do things that you said you would never do. And I thought, well, if I do a gay scene, I got all these emails from different companies. I take the largest bidder and I do it, and I didn't know how bad it was going to impact me.
Today we have the opportunity to sit down with Joshua Broome. From 2007 to 2013, Joshua was one of the biggest stars in porn. Under the pseudonym Rocco Reed, he made over 1,000 films during that 6-year period. The conversation we're about to have is particularly relevant due to the rise of OnlyFans over the last few years. Instead of opting for a normal career, more and more people are starting OnlyFans accounts with the hopes of building wealth by leveraging their bodies. Recent reports have even shown that thousands of 18-year-old women are skipping college completely and going straight into porn. If you ever watched the popular Whatever podcast, then you've seen OnlyFans models talk firsthand about this experience. Some people are outspoken advocates of porn, both for the rights of sex workers and also the right to sexual expression. Wherever you land on that, the question we want to explore today is if doing porn for a living is harmless. How does it affect you over the long term? Does it have a positive or a negative effect on your relationships and your social life? Also, how does it affect how you relate to sex in general? Joshua has much wisdom to offer in these areas as one of the more successful porn stars in recent memory. We believe that after today's conversation, you'll leave with greater clarity on how to view your body, this popular new profession, and even life itself. So without further ado, Joshua Broome. All right.
Let's try it, bro.
Thanks for coming out here to New York City.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Are you familiar? With the city very well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Brooklyn at least twice a year, but I've probably been in New York 100 times.
Wow. Okay, so you're very familiar with the city. What's your opinion of New York?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love how it's a beautiful melting pot of culture.
Yeah.
You can find the best of the best food because often it's indigenous to whoever's running the restaurant.
Yeah.
So. You can get authentic, like every food you can imagine, and just the people here.
Yeah.
And also, like I'm a sneakerhead, so like when I'm walking somewhere, I love to see all the J's and the dunks and all that good stuff.
Yeah. And congratulations on your new book. We're gonna put that in the link below. How's that been over the past week or so?
It's been fun. It was so weird because just coming from me signing headshots of me shirtless, 15 years ago, to me signing a book of how I walked through, a lot of hard stuff.
Yeah,
it was really refreshing. Like there's just things that have happened in my life that, on just like in this chapter of my life, there's things where I did where. I didn't feel so great or wasn't so proud of some of the things that I've done, but just being in a place where I am proud of the things that I'm doing, it's kind of beautiful.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I've been really excited for this conversation. I think in part because of like what we're seeing unfold like real time in our culture. When it comes to like the topic of porn, I think there's many different ways to tackle it. There's what it does to the brain. For those that are listening, I'd go back to episode 2 of the Mighty Pursuit podcast. We had Dr. Anna Lemke on here. She's addiction medicine specialist at Stanford University, and we were just talking about like what actually happens when we consume it. So that's one angle. How it affects relationships is another angle, and then obviously it's starting with the New York Times article in 2020, like explosion with around justice and the content that was on sites like Pornhub and non-consensual stuff. And so, those are different angles, and we might touch on those today, but I think that the other aspect of this that's happening in our culture is like the topic of porn as a profession.
Sure.
And so the latest numbers show that about 2% of females are now on OnlyFans, adult females, which, as we'll learn from your story, the industry was small for like most of the time that it existed. And now there's just been this explosion of interest, almost like recreationally, of like, how do I leverage this as a profession? And that number keeps rising every year. And, we talked a little bit about the Whatever podcast. And then, people like Adam22, so there's this narrative about porn of like, you kind of have the ability to control your own destiny. Sure. And, make a ton of money. And so in that way, I think what the data is saying is that it's being looked at more favorably over the past couple of years than it has been in the past. And I think with your story, I think we're going to get like a lot of clarity on what exactly is happening behind the scenes and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, from what I could get from your story, you grew up in the South. And so the journey with this whole topic kind of started in your early 20s when you moved to Hollywood. So can you take me behind like that decision of why you moved to Hollywood?
Yes, I grew up in a small town in South Carolina, like small enough where one grocery store, one gas station. So I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, because that was the closest major city that had a hospital. Yeah. But yeah, so my mom had me when she got pregnant with me when she was 15, had me when she was 16. Yeah. And so my dad was in that town, but never in my home or in my life. So that was the kind of fatherlessness, along with the rise in the consumption and participation in pornography. Fatherlessness is rising as well, and I would love to talk about how I think that there's a correlation.
So you didn't know him really?
So I knew who he was, but it's kind of like I knew that he was my father, but I didn't know the nuances of his life. Yeah. I knew his name, I knew what he looked like, and I spent, there was times where he would visit me, and we tried to spend time together. I think a few times, but I think in a real way, while it was confusing for me as a child, the rise in the reality of shame in his life probably led to this. Well, it got more difficult as time passed, because he got married relatively soon after I was born. So he gets married 2 or 3 years after I'm born.
Was he like 16 or so when
this whole started? Same age.
So he got married at like 18 or 19?
18, 19, something like that. Yeah. I mean, because I don't know the dynamic between his and my mother's relationship. I hadn't, for some reason, I haven't asked that. Yeah. I feel like it was an awkward question. But so he gets married and has a family and does all these things. And they're not, I think, so he has a daughter and a son, and I think the daughter is only, like 4 or 5 years younger than me. So, yeah, he gets married, same town, and he's growing up with the family. And I think that's another factor that led to, because there was time that had passed, and the reality of the tension that I'm literally in this town where I would see him. I would see, members of his family. He would see members of my family. My mom worked at a restaurant that was across the street from a gas station that his family owned, and it was named his name. So like the like almost movie narrative of the broken single mom working at a restaurant, doing everything she can, and then tangibly seeing across the street the name of my dad.
Did he like feel a responsibility to you? Because I mean, like when you have a kid at that age, I'd imagine like a lot of people were like, "Okay, this is my son. I have a responsibility." Was that like a dynamic in your relationship, or not really?
I mean, I don't recall that. I mean, so we never had a relationship. Yeah. So I don't know what he was internalizing. Yeah. I assumed that he felt some kind of responsibility, and it wasn't like he denied that I was his or anything like that. I just think that because he was so young, and he had another life. Time just was a catalyst for shame or something along. I just because I communicate it like that now because back in that point I was angry, I was frustrated, and there's been times in my life where I blamed him for the things I didn't have or the mistakes that I made. But today I have empathy for him because just the reality of someone getting someone pregnant, their junior, senior year of high school, and then the drama that would go into that, and then I would say another factor would be, well, if you're not going to be together, like what does that, like, how does that weigh on you? Now you have another family, and so I think there's just so many nuances there. I try to have empathy for him at that point in his life. And it certainly caused like pain in my life, caused mental and emotional trauma as I got older, just seeing the thing that I needed and wanted, but didn't have real access to it. And I don't think that he intended to just not be in my life. I think it was difficult. And something like that, you just have to be incredibly intentional and continue to pursue that person, even if it doesn't make sense regarding like the dynamic of your life, because he was trying to work a full-time job, provide for the family within his home and things like that, and like he didn't withhold child support or anything like that, but so that definitely a contributing factor of how I saw myself in the world, for sure.
And so then you go out to Hollywood, and like what were you searching for when you went out there?
Yeah, so I started modeling and acting when I was 13. Loved the industry, loved theater, loved acting. But I was in this like internal struggle that many people have. Like when you're pursuing, it's almost like the baseball player that loves baseball, but you're better at basketball and you're having success at basketball. Even if the thing that you want to do is the thing that you're not as good at. So I think for me, I was like a mediocre actor. It's like not bad, but like pretty good. But I had a lot of success modeling. So like modeling was the thing that kept me in the game, and they, and a lot of times they go hand in hand. But different agents, different industries, obviously. But had a lot of success modeling. Had some success acting. I studied theater in college for a few years and then dropped out, moved to Hollywood thinking, I'd find my big break. So I was looking to put myself in closer proximity to the industry I wanted to be in. And I did. And I got an agent, and I did, a few things. And it was like, for the most part, like I was doing okay.
What kind of modeling was it?
So, I'd done a lot, like this is like back in the day. So like Structure, J. Crew, like Guess, like stuff like that.
A lot of mainstream stuff,
Yeah, but I was doing more runway than commercial, so so doing that, and it was, but then like acting, it's like I got one part in this, like, not bogus, but you got like an A film, a B film, and a C film, where it's like if you weren't on camera, like you were holding a boom, so it was like, but I loved it. Yeah.
And so you said that, I saw you sign another interview, you said the grind wasn't something I was really prepared for when you got out to LA. What did you mean by that?
Well, if I'm honest, like everything I'd pursued came to me pretty easily. When I was outside looking in, I'm pretty much, I was like a big fish in a small pond, and then I was now a little fish in a large pond. So I thought that I would just have instantaneous success when I moved there, and it was more expensive than I thought, and just living there, and I was in circles, trying to keep up with those around me, and living far beyond my means, and just doing,
So was money a struggle, you would say, at that point?
I wouldn't say it was a struggle. I was very frivolous in how I spent my money, but I most certainly had enough. And so like money wasn't a factor, me doing porn, but I was living in one of the most expensive places in the United States, living far beyond my means. So to the person that makes $10 million. If you spend 11, you're still broke.
Yeah. And so you had this moment where you're working at a restaurant, and then a few girls approached you. So like, what happened? What happened there?
Yeah, I mean, essentially they were headhunters.
Yeah.
A headhunter in any business, like you're going to identify someone that would, be a potential client or customer for that industry, and if they are successful in getting that person to be involved in a way that brings in finance, then they financially benefit from that as well. But essentially, that's what they were doing. They were like, "Hey, do you want to be in acting?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm here for." But they were talking about pornography, and there was three, pretty girls sitting at a table, and
They just said, "Do you want to do porn?" Just like that.
Yeah.
Were you like?
I was pretty taken back by it.
That's like the most like just sitting in a restaurant, someone comes up to you and says
But
that.
it's not. I mean, to be honest, not that. I don't. I mean, knowing what I know today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a girl that's in the industry. It's like you should do what I'm doing, and like a pretty girl coming up to you saying like, "Oh, like, do you want to have sex for money?" It's like it's not that crazy.
Yeah.
That's like far less crazy today than it was 15, 16 years ago. But so straight up asked me, "Hey, would you be interested in doing porn? If so, we would love to introduce you to our agent."
Yeah.
And I think language is really important because the words that we use, they break down barriers. Like language is intentional. So I think like them asking if I wanted to do acting, and then them hearing, because like when you ask good questions, you get ammunition to have a better conversation.
Yeah.
Or if you were trying to manipulate someone or coerce someone in a certain direction, if you give me information, I can be more prepared to get you to do the thing that I want you to do.
Yeah.
So they asked, "Do you want to be an actor?" I'm like, "I am an actor." "Okay, great. Here's essentially a counterfeit version of what you're pursuing.
Yeah.
It just happens to involve hardcore, pornography. But they didn't ask me like, "Hey, do I want to go to a porn set and do a porn scene?" The segue was, "Well, I want you to meet with our agent." So more language, more things that make sense to me. You're going to have an interview, or like a casting.
Very professional, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're going to go to a studio and meet with my agent, and I go and LA Direct Models, where this agency was, is adjacent to Universal Studios. So Universal Studios is on the right, and LA Direct Models is on the left. Yeah. And I walk into this very nice place, and it's really it's clear what it is pretty quick, because you go in the waiting area. There's Penthouse, Playboy, Hustler, like on the coffee table, like in the the waiting area. Then you walk down the hallway to his office, and like everyone that he represents that's gotten like a cover for Playboy, Penthouse, whatever, they're framed on the sides, and go into his office, and there's this English guy that was sitting there waiting on me, and I just remember he was just like, it was almost like he was too put together to be in this situation, because I mean he was like literally like 3-piece suit, vest, double Windsor, like big fat double Windsor tie, and he asked me a few questions, and got pretty much like cut to the chase pretty quickly. But the 3 questions he asked me was so interesting. He asked me, why am I in LA? What am I hoping to accomplish? And how did I grow up? Yeah. And I think like those again.
Why the last one?
Well, I mean, if you're looking to manipulate someone, it's so like there's significant evidence that someone that grew up in a broken home is broken, and they're looking for something they don't have. So it's easy to get someone to do something that equates to what they believe they'll get if
That's
enough
so
people.
That someone who's running it would ask that
I
question.
mean, it's interesting, but not. I mean, it's very intelligent on his part, because if his objective. Because that entire industry is built on manipulation. Because if I can get you to the point where you believe your worth is tied to you selling yourself for sex, and if you do that for long enough, you'll believe, well, the only thing I can do is sell myself for sex.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden your no loses its validity because you have to say yes because that's the only thing you can say yes to.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in a broken home? He didn't say that. He's like, what was your, how'd you grow up? What's your family life like? Well, just me and my mom for the most part.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Check one. What are you doing out here? Modeling and acting. Okay, you're pursuing something. What do you hope to accomplish? And I said, ironically, I guess I want to be famous.
Yeah.
And if you think about the idea of being famous, it's not tangible.
Yeah.
It's because how famous would equate to me being famous enough where I felt like I made it.
Yeah.
If my objective was to be rich, how much money would equate to me making enough money so that I met the quota
Yeah,
in
it's
which...
like relative, yeah.
Yeah, because if it's relative and not measurable, it's not obtainable because as my desire increases and I experience the thing that I think is going to satisfy me and it doesn't, I'm going to become insatiable and want
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
And it's just this endless cyclical cycle of me pursuing something, it not working, me being depressed, and me searching for something else or for more.
Yeah. So he asked that question, but like, what do you feel like, whether in your past or like, what made you open first to, they asked you that question in the restaurant, and now you're sitting there having this conversation with them. What do you feel like made you open to doing that in the first place?
I think that's a great question, and I think that's the right question because there's so many times where people do something and they think that thing is the catalyst for the carnage in their life.
Yeah.
But it was more so the why behind the what.
Yeah.
Like what led up to the reason you said yes. And I would say me growing up without a dad was a factor because, like most people, specifically men, you have this high-achieving personality. So if you have this inadequacy in your life, often you will find yourself believing, well, if I earn enough or if I become enough, it will replace the good job sign that you didn't hear.
Yeah.
So for me, I thought if I could obtain enough accolades, affirmation, and accomplishments, it would mitigate the lack that I had within my soul.
Yeah.
So I think that was a factor. Then also I saw pornography for the first time when I was 13, led to some confusion, some curiosity, and I never really struggled watching pornography, but me not having an example of a healthy dynamic in my home and me seeing pornography, I became very promiscuous very quickly. And so I think that contributed to me living a very promiscuous lifestyle. So I get to the point where I'm in Hollywood and someone's asking, hey, do you want to have sex with people on camera and get paid? It's like, well,
You're already doing that.
Well, these are things that I'm
camera,
doing.
yeah.
Yeah, there's just not a check or a camera.
Yeah.
But so it's so ironic because the thing that I said yes to because I was used to doing this thing because there was no check and no camera.
Yeah.
Later on, the fact that there was a check and a camera
Yeah.
validated any and everything.
Yeah. And so obviously, I guess, what did it start with, your first film or scene, or like what happened from that moment with that dude?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a real way, most people were like, how could you do something like that? It's like, if you're already living that way, especially then, like there's this, I don't think there was a clear understanding on my part that, well, if you do this, it's going to have a very large impact on your life.
Yeah, like you're not going.
Well,
back,
yeah. Well, I mean, I thought, well, what could happen?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm going to have sex with this girl and I'm going to get paid for it. Like, no one's going to know.
Yeah.
Like very, very naive.
Yeah, like how would they know?
Yeah, right. It's like, well, and I think it's multifaceted, the fact that you go by a stage name, because kind of a nod to my book where it's like, if you believe a lie to be true, it's true to you.
Yeah.
And if you believe that because you change your name, that you will have this, level of obscurity to the public, it's silly because the name is attached to your name. You know,
Did they give you that name, Rocco Reed, like
well,
immediately?
I mean, it was like a 30-second conversation. He's like, well, what do what, I'm going to book this scene. Because the conversation was, tell me about yourself. You know, he asked me those 3 questions. I answered them. He's like, I think that you would be really successful. And the industry is shifting into doing a lot of parodies. And the fact that you have, you know, an acting background and you're a good-looking guy, you could be really successful in the industry if you can do it. He's like, so if you can do it, you will be as successful as you want to be, and you will make as much money as you want to make.
Yeah.
So I hear that, and I'm like, well, you know, this is not what I was pursuing, but this guy believes in me, it sounds like, and it sounds like I can obtain not necessarily my dream, but a counterfeit version of what I want. So maybe I can make the best of the situation. So these are some of the things that I'm internalizing to almost justify what I was going to do.
Yeah. Tell me about like the first day on set.
So first day on set, it was really interesting because what led up to that was I agreed to do the scene, and so there's a lab in LA that everyone gets, full panel STD and AIDS test, and that's almost like your work permit, because you have to have it has to be like 21 days or less valid. So being tested every 3 weeks or so, but I went and did that, and honestly, it's like I'd lived a very promiscuous life and never had an STD test, so it's probably like not a bad thing to go get. Yeah. So go get that. It comes back clear, so you know a sigh of relief from that, just knowing that. And then I show up on set, and again, I honestly thought that I was going to be handed a camcorder. You know, because this is like 2006. Yeah. I thought I was going to be handed like a handheld camcorder, go in a room with a girl, and, give me back the camcorder, and I'm going to hand you a check. Not the case. So I walk onto set, and, you know, I'm filling out paperwork when I get there, and then there's, you know, catering and a makeup room full of girls, and off to the right, there's, you know, someone they're shooting. So they call them pretty girls. So it's like the shoot they would shoot. Because it's so interesting. I would love to talk about this. Just the way that they like take a bunch of content and partition it out and making it several pieces of content. But anyway, they're shooting photos with a girl, and then PA comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, I understand this is your first time. Here's a Viagra. If you want it, it's in your hand. It's yours. If you've never taken it before, I'd bite it in half. We need you in 30 minutes. So,
yeah,
you know." And
is it just like easy to just like to get in the zone for that, or like did you feel like, okay, no, I need to?
I was terrified. Yeah. Well, I mean, because it wasn't what I thought it was. Yeah. It was. I mean, there's camera A, B, C. Yeah. There's someone shooting BTS, and there's like random people, like kind of not. This is not always the case, but this day there was like random people that you didn't know who they were, just like sitting there and watching. And it's like, are they, do they know this person? Are they just hanging out? Do they own the studio? Mm. But that would be a common occurrence where like if you were shooting at someone's, like there were a lot of people that in the Hollywood Hills that would rent out their homes. They had like another home that they would use, almost like before Airbnb like was a thing. It's like people would rent out their homes for porn. Yeah. And they would make a ton of money doing it, Yeah. But there would be just random people sitting there on set. So I was terrified, because it wasn't what I thought. So I like go in the bathroom and I'm like, giving myself the, bro, what are you doing? Like you should leave, and I'm really asking myself like, should I do this? I can't do this. Can I do this? Yeah. And it's really interesting because like going back to the intentionality of the process where they insisted that, but they were using it. They were using the hospitality angle, but it was actually a coercion angle. Yeah. Where it's like, I'm going to send a town car to pick you up. I'm like, no, I can get there myself. They're like, we'll send a town car
very official,
to pick you up. So you feel validated and special.
Yeah.
But what's true is now the town car picks you up and takes you to a location that you didn't know the address. Like you could find out the address while you were there, but for me to leave, I would have to almost like a scared kid at a sleepover say, "Hey, I changed my mind. I want to come home."
Yeah.
So literally, if I were to want to leave,
And there's no Uber.
there's no Uber. This is like where am I going to find a cab? It's like so yeah. I mean, this is pre Uber. So so I'm on set, and all that had led up to me believing that I could not withdraw my yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, well, screw it, let's do it. And I popped the whole Viagra, pounded a bottle of water, and walk there. Like the director, waves me in, and there was no I never made eye contact with the girl. We never had a conversation. I knew her real name and her stage name only because before you do the scene, you have to see the copies of their ID and see copies of their ID, and then with their test and make sure it's the same person, and then sign that you saw it. So that was the only reason that was as much information as I knew about her before I walk into a sea of lights and have sex with her. And it was kind of a blur. It's just like it's almost like once you're in it, it's like you're running a sprint.
It's like go into a cloud or something. Just like ignore that people, because it must be weird. Like
it's
watching you.
It's beyond them watching you, because the thought that there's just cameras on and you're doing something is not true. More so, that person is there and the camera you're performing to the cameras.
Yeah.
The camera's over your shoulder and the girl is looking at the camera as if it's you.
Yeah.
You're having sex not for pleasure, you're having sex for the camera. So if the camera can't see it, you have to stop and adjust your body so they see it. So super uncomfortable. So it went from me thinking I was having sex with a girl and I was being paid for it, it became a task that I was trying to do well at.
Yeah.
So the things that I remember were, the random guy on set that his job was to hand me lubricant, or the director literally laying, again, it's 2006, there was no there wasn't a Canon 5D 7D whatever. It was like a giant camera literally on my shoulder, and the girl talking to the person, so it was like I was an object. So super awkward, and but did it, finished, and felt disgusting afterwards. They had hand soap in the shower to take a shower because they were at a studio. It was a multi. It was a place with similar to this. It was a place with multi studios and a random little shower. And not saying this place is sketchy. I'm just saying that there were multiple there were multiple studios in the place, and that's what it was for. It was and it was weird. I just remember getting a check, and I just remember so clearly because it was the last time that I did a scene. It was something that really stuck out in my head, but just the fact that you couldn't really wash off what had happened. The lubricant in my leg hair, the little bit of dial soap that was in the shower wasn't sufficient to wash it off, and felt, because Viagra, it messes with your blood pressure, so I'm red and blotchy and have a headache, and I've got this check and I feel disgusting, and it wasn't difficult to do the thing. But it certainly wasn't what I thought I was going to be. Yeah.
And so then what kind of happened in the aftermath of that first thing?
Yes, pretty quickly. It was on a really popular site. This scene went viral, and for 2006 it went viral, and very quickly that scene started getting shared out, and friends, fraternity brothers, even family find out about this, and living in a small town, it only takes one person for everyone to know. And all of a sudden, I'm having this like really awkward, shame-filled conversation with my mom, asking me like if I had done this thing.
How did your mom find out that you did this?
Well, I mean, if so, she works at like the place that everyone in this town eats lunch.
Yeah.
So literally, if one person finds out, this place is filled with working men that come there to eat lunch
So it's like a
every
gossip
day.
trail, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like if the kid from the small town like did a porn on the most popular porn website that exists, and all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, did you see that was him? Did you see that was him? Did you know so and so did this? Did you know Josh did this? Yeah. So like everyone tells everyone, and then the byproduct of that, my mom eventually finds out. And then also, I mean, it creates a little buzz for me, and I get a phone call from my mainstream agent. It's like, hey, we understand that you have done this, and we can't be associated with your likeness. We wish you the best. Farewell.
Wow.
Which, I should have known that would happen, but I honestly thought no one was going to find out. I thought, this was just going to go, I don't know, just like into the internet, as, I don't know.
Which is interesting because, I mean, I think even thinking about people doing it today, like you went into that experience and you weren't necessarily thinking about that. But like, let's just say I want to like do OnlyFans now, and then in a few years I want to be an accountant, and then just like, like you don't know how people are gonna like react to you of like, oh yeah, this is what I did with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that so what we're seeing, so regarding pornography, multi $100+ billion industry, and the people working there regarding technology are the best of the best, and because of that, so they're at the forefront of all technology. So any kind of monetization that exists on YouTube or Instagram, it was gleaned from Pornhub.
Yeah.
So
wild.
Yeah. So, but I say that to say, so the content, like the content creator, like the influencer model, really came from pornography.
Yeah.
But then Instagram and really TikTok normalized it in such a way, especially during COVID. You start to seeing, people with a large audience, like, okay, this person has a large audience, so they've got a level of relational equity with that audience, and they've got high engagement. So it's advantageous for companies to market their products with a trusted voice to a trusted audience that they have connection with, because they can move a product, they can move an audience. It makes sense. So all of a sudden, content creation becomes normalized. So I think like that is the reason that OnlyFans skyrocketed, because all of a sudden there was this new, like, there was no barrier. Like, there was a significant barrier of being able to make enough money to be successful.
Yeah.
Because there's a cost. It's like, what you wouldn't do X, Y, and Z unless you were obtaining, like, if the ROI is not there, like, you're not going to invest your time, and also like your likeness, right? You're not gonna give away part of yourself unless you believe in some way there's going to be a tangible return on your investment. So I think, like, because of all of that, that's why we're seeing the rise in it, because there's a lower level of entry, and there's this normalization of content creation, and sex is so normalized that just falls into the same bucket.
Yeah. So when you were doing this, like, initially, this like first film, did you see porn as an illegitimate profession, or in your mind was it like a legitimate thing?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know people did porn for a living. Like, I didn't think that would be a career thing. Like, when I did it, I was like, I mean, it was for that one time, that one check. I never intended on doing it then. I most certainly didn't intend on doing it for a living. I didn't even, like, I knew there were, like, porn stars that had, like, notoriety, but again, like, I assumed they probably did something else on top of that. Like, I didn't think that it was
just that. Yeah. And so how did you go from first being hesitant to now finding yourself in a position where you were going to do more films, or willing to do more films, especially like you have this conversation with your mom.
Yeah.
You know, like this whole like storm from just this first thing, like
Yeah.
how did that then parlay into, okay, now I'm going to continue doing this?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, you know, I'll explain it like this. So if you did something like really bad
Yeah.
as a kid, and then let's say that you, I don't know, like you did something, you got kicked out of school.
Yeah.
Or something in that sense. So you do something, and now there's a conversation, and there's the opportunity for correction and redirection, or you believe I've done bad, now I'm bad, and what's going to happen is because you're kicked out of school, you can no longer go back to the same school that you were in. You can't continue the path you were on. That's not an option. For me, I could not continue modeling and acting. That's what I had poured my life into for almost 10 years. That was my plan A, B, C, and D. That was my only plan. So all of a sudden, I couldn't do the thing that I was passionate about and dead set on.
Yeah.
So often, people will come to a crossroads in their life where I have to change. Maybe something doesn't work out, or maybe I do something to blow up my life in some way. You know, I get fired from my job. Now I can't do the thing that I'm comfortable with, that I'm good at, that I find my value in, maybe even my identity in. I can't do that anymore. So if compromise led you to that place, it's so much easier to just continue to compromise.
Yeah.
It's easy not to change. So I was at this crossroads where my options were continue doing porn or change everything about my life. So maybe that meant moving home. Maybe that meant, you know, going back to school, you know, getting a degree in something else. Because what's easy to believe is, well, that was my only option. I mean, that's what I was telling myself, but certainly not true. I was 22. I had money in the bank. I had the ability to do something else with my life, most certainly. Like one pornographic film would have not ruined my life.
Yeah.
Like it would have died down. It would have went away. Like maybe it would have popped up to the surface every once in a while. But you know, if I'm not, especially if I'm not in the public eye, you know, it would have just went away. But I believed, well, I can't do the thing that I want to do. I feel ashamed because the only person that I feel like loves me and believes in me, I've hurt them, and I feel ashamed. So instead of me, you know, showing, well, you know, I messed up, I'm sorry I hurt you, because she invests tremendously in, you know, me, you know, creating, you know, me doing stuff to have a reel, me doing headshots, like all the stuff that went into me getting to where I was. It was a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice on her part. So I felt guilty and ashamed because of that. But long story short, I believed, well, this is my only option.
Yeah.
So, and then just as I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, you know, how am I going to go about this? My phone rings. It's Derek. Hey, everything went great. I would love to sign you to a contract and represent you. I was like, okay, what does that look like? He's like, well, I can book you for like 10 to 15 scenes this month.
Wow.
And then
the floodgates open.
So yeah, so like I went from doing that one to doing, I think I did like 12 the next month, and then from that point I did 20 or more for 6 years.
Wow. And so, as you get adjusted like to the industry, like what did you notice about the people you worked with? And obviously this could be a sensitive subject. If someone's watching and they're doing OnlyFans right now, I just feel like, well, that's not me, or that's not my story, or or what. But like just generally speaking, I think it helps shape like what did you notice about them? Like why do you think the people you're working with decided to do porn as well, and just the whole background of the industry? Yeah,
I mean, I would say, there's people that are in the porn industry that were in the porn industry when I left that I have a ton of respect for and love them dearly. Yeah. And we might disagree on some things, but there's incredible people, incredibly creative people that are in that industry that I care a ton about. So I never have anything like egregious to say about anyone in the industry. I know that some of the things I say might, feel abrasive,
Yeah.
but it's never about them.
Yeah.
It's more about the industry. But I would say the commonality with the girls, it was especially when I was in the industry, it was a level of manipulation that got them to the industry.
Yeah.
I would say more than half the time it would be a girl that said, yeah, the way that I got in the industry, I did this photo shoot, and this camera guy asked me to take one thing off, then another, and then I wanted to stop, and he was like, well, you've already gone this far, so
Might as well.
well, you might as well. And this is not true. Like this would be illegal but in the moment, like if you don't know better, it's so easy for you to be coerced. But the cameraman would say, well, you've already signed this contract, so I'm going to use these photos regardless of what you say, and this is going to ruin you. So since that's true, you might as well just keep going, because if you don't, I'm not going to pay you. And not only is your life going to be ruined, but you're not going to get paid. What do you want to do?
Do they say it in like those terms?
Yes. I mean, it's literally a script.
Yeah.
And then looking back, just thinking about the level of coercion that went into. So there's multiple sites, and to this day, like teen porn is something that is very popular. And you look at the teen porn, and they're dressed in pigtails and stockings. So that's not depicting a teenager. Number one, and number two, there's girls that it was the website was built on this. And sometimes this would be the only scene the girl did, and sometimes this would be the first scene of a long career. But there was this website called Barely Legal, and literally it was their 18th birthday. So if it's their 18th birthday, how did they get there?
Yeah.
I mean, there was something
That was happening before they were 18. Yeah.
Oh, certainly. I mean, the plane ticket was bought. That the STD test was taken. Like all these things. Like literally, this is their 18th birthday, and they've done all these things prior to. So, how does that happen?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say, yeah. I mean, a tremendous amount of coercion. But so your question, what is the person like? Well, if they're successful, if they're like, you've got really three different groups of people. We got the people that do like one or two scenes and never do it again. And there's either they've been coerced to being there, or they, have been with someone that's in the industry, and they maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and they've convinced them to do a few scenes. So that's like one group of people. And there's another group of people where they're in and out of the industry, and that's almost like the most broken person, where they did some, so they have access to go back because they have relationships there, or they know people, but they don't want to be there. So they're doing that for a little bit of money, and then they go and they try to figure out life, but they always end up dipping their toe back in the water. And then there's the person that does it as a career. And this, like, I have to uniquely speak about the time that I was in the industry. So if you were like the top 5% in that industry, you had to be charismatic, you had to have a good personality, you had to like be able to sell yourself, you had to have some acting ability, and it was this person that had a tremendous amount of creativity and self-awareness, to the extent where they had value, and so it's the very not purpose driven, but a very driven individual. And you have to understand like how to market yourself, how to do all these things, how to be personable, how to have a good personality, and things like that. So the commonality, though, I would say everyone is looking for something they don't have, and they've either died to whatever they truly want, or they're believing that, well, this is a variation of the thing
that I want.
Yeah, where it's like, especially like back in the day, like you look at some of the top guys who were in the industry, back then, almost all of them come from some kind of acting background. So it's like you're pursuing something. Like, for example, Randy Spears, his name's Greg, but he was in the industry for a long time, and he started in the industry because of the recession. That he was a working, successful actor. There was a recession. He started doing porn, but because he did porn, he couldn't go back to what he was doing. So when he had a part, he poured himself into it. He was a phenomenal actor. So there were so many people who were great in some aspects of life, but they had compromised, and they couldn't rescind their compromise, and they were stuck.
Yeah.
So they just told themselves, well, I'm going to make the best of this situation. They owned it, and they would maybe articulate that they loved it or whatever, but you have to, because if you don't, you're a walking contradiction. So I would say, I don't know if that completely answered your question.
No, it did for sure.
Yeah.
I think, I guess you would have to eventually become numb to like people watching you have sex to continue doing it.
Yeah, I would say, but to like Michael Jordan, 10 years into his career, he's not in shock and awe that he's playing at Madison Square Garden. Like anything can become arbitrary to anyone.
Yeah.
Based on your level of exposure. So, after me doing 1,000 scenes, it's like me walking onto a set and doing a monologue and whatever else. It's incredibly arbitrary. So, but what's unique about that is like when an act of intimacy that is meant to be done in private is done in public, and there's this disassociation from reality, because you have to disassociate yourself from reality to do that, because you can't just be in the moment, because that wouldn't make a good scene.
Yeah.
Because the performance is not for you or the person you're doing it with. It's for the camera.
Yeah.
So if I'm not open up to the camera, if I'm not doing things like, if it's too fast or if it's not open, it's like there's all these things that would make sense if you were in the privacy of your bedroom that doesn't make sense on camera.
Like you're not even like
there's
connecting with the person really.
You have to be disconnected, because if you're too connected, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because it's not for you.
Yeah.
It's not for your pleasure. It's for the camera's
Yeah.
pleasure. It's for the viewer's pleasure.
Yeah. And so it's supposed to kind of mirror a particular, I guess, fantasy or.
Oh, it is. It's
something.
It's. I like to compare it. Inception is one of my favorite movies, and there's this fight scene in the elevator where you're upside down and time's shifting and all this stuff. Like you wouldn't watch that and not think, well, there's some choreography to this. There's some cinematic effects that are happening. There's some editing that's happening. There's probably some bungee cords on people. There's a lot of stuff that went into the fantasy in which you're consuming. This is not a real fight scene that happened, on a whim. This is something that was well put together, that had a director, had paid actors that were doing what the director told them, and then it was depicted in such a way that creates a fantasy that's enticing to the person consuming it.
Yeah.
It's not about them.
Which I think is so interesting, because most people are initially exposed to sex in general, maybe as a 13, 14-year-old when they start watching this stuff. And then, I think Billie Eilish had talked about this a little bit, but you start thinking of that as sex, which is really weird in itself based on what you're saying, because it's not actually sex. And it's like you get these like images of like, oh yeah, the guy could just go forever, and the woman is just like making all these like sounds and just crazy, and like it's just this whole experience, but it's all choreographed.
That.
So it's just.
It's choreographed and like it's edited. So like the people don't look like that, and the people don't have sex like that.
Yeah.
Like there's endless factors. Like guys almost exclusively are taking erectile dysfunction medications. The women are using some kind of lubricant, sometimes numbing cream. Oftentimes their bodies are airbrushed so they look perfect, and there's editing. You're hiding things, you're showcasing things, you're shooting at angles that make things look bigger, better, like more like. So like it's a fantasy.
Yeah.
But like to your point, you look at 94% of pornography depicts violence. It's like and then you have people trying to choke people in real life, and it's like, gosh, you're trying to choke someone that hasn't been exposed to that. They're gonna think this person's insane.
Yeah.
Like, why are you choking me?
Yeah.
Like that's not a normal behavior. You don't just think of that. Like that's something you see and you act out. And then, I mean, you look at, like, to your point, 13 is, an age, but average age of exposure 3 years ago was 11. Today it's 8 years old.
Wow.
And it's because there's this level of, it's a normative behavior now, and it's accessible for free everywhere, and it's crazy. I mean, even the fact that some states are implementing age verification. There's like Pornhub has an app called VPN Hub that allows you to bypass the
age verification.
But and it's rated 4 and up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in a real way, there's this. The Fight the New Drug has a ton of great information, but there was this biologist. His last name's Tinbergen, and he did this experiment with butterflies where he studied this certain species of butterflies, and then he created this 3D, beautiful, better, more vibrant variation of a female butterfly. Put the butterfly in space, and then stood back and watch. And the males tried to mate with the female, the fictitious female butterfly. And then they started fighting among each other, and then they started slowly dying out. And it's because the depiction of what you desire, when it's not attainable, it creates, a lesser desire for the thing that you were made to desire.
Yeah.
So in a real way, I speak at tons of universities where I hear people, like, either in relationships or even on the other side, like married, saying, I have this porn addiction and I got married, but the person I'm with, they don't have this certain aspect that I'm attracted to. But what they're communicating is a fetish that they became infatuated with from watching pornography, and they're pursuing something in their mind that they think is a personal preference, but it's actually, it's actually something damaging to them.
Well, I think that what's really interesting about that is, one of the people we follow, scientists, her name is Dr. Emily Nagoski. She's one of the top sex educators, and she talks about how, like, we don't come out of the womb with, like, innate sexual stimuli.
Sure.
And so what that means is like why you're attracted to what you're attracted to is far
what you're
more
exposed
influenced by to what you're exposed to. And there's been studies done on, like, why do men like big boobs, or like all these different things that you see in porn, and there's direct correlation to, like, what you're exposed to in porn. It all of a sudden becomes a real life thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
But it's like, gosh, in a real way, the things that you consume dictate what you have an appetite for.
Yeah.
And it's like, so if I've never had, the delicious Thai curries that I've had in my life, I wouldn't have a desire for it because I've never been exposed to it.
Yeah.
So in a real way, there's things that are at some point harmful for me to desire because they inflict pain or turmoil on another person. And I mean, and there's girls that have been abused, and their abuser used, like, BDSM pornography to normalize the behavior and then abuse them. And now, outside of that relationship, that person that was abused neurologically and cognitively is at the point where they've associated love with pain.
With that, yeah.
So they seek out abusive behavior because that reminds them of a place where they found comfort, even in the chaos of that.
Yeah.
And that's not a singular example. That's hundreds of examples.
So did this, as you progressed, do you feel like this affected how you saw sex in general?
Sure. I mean, it was a job for me, exclusively, and it's almost like sex outside of work. It was like because I was working 20, 25 times a day, where it was just like I mean, it's crazy.
Did you say 20, 25 times a day?
I'm sorry, 25 times a month. Like I think 5 scenes are the most I did in a day.
Yeah.
But like you're, trying to manage how much semen, your body's producing. You're trying to make sure that you can have an erection, because for guys, like if you failed a scene, for the most part, you're done.
Yeah.
If you're very established and
What do you mean failed the scene?
So if you could not maintain an erection or finish the scene, so if you cannot maintain an erection for the entirety of the scene and climax when you were told to, that would consist of you failing
would
a scene.
time your orgasms.
Well, no, it's like we're gonna shoot for 4 positions at 5 minutes apiece. When we have 20 total minutes of footage, it's time for you to finish. And
Do you pretend sometimes that you're gonna finish?
No.
Or it's actually genuine.
it has to be genuine.
Yeah.
But so what would happen would be it would genuinely happen. But so what would happen if you couldn't right then and there, they would cut and you would sit there and masturbate until you were right there, and then they would grab.
And then they go, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, if they would, I mean, there were times where they would have, like, people would have to fake like that they had an orgasm, but I mean that would always be very detrimental for the male talent, because that's your job. You know? So, but all that to say, that's why at that point the industry was so small, because if you, like, a director generally had a contract with a distribution company, but the director was essentially covering all the cost for the product. So like you're gonna do a film, because like this is in the day where it's primarily DVD and like some like internet contribution, but distribution, but DVD still was kind of king. And on a DVD, generally it's 5 scenes. So you're paying for 5 scenes as a director. So you're paying for the female talent, you're paying for the set, you're paying for the crew. If wherever you're filming, you have to pay for the permit. You're footing the bill for all these things.
No.
So all these things transpire, and the guy can't get it done. Everyone's getting paid but him, yet the director still has to pay everyone else.
Yeah.
So if you just cost someone $20,000, probability of you getting hired again is pretty slim to none.
Yeah.
So for that's why, like, in the industry, when I was in there, it's like you're talking like 20, 25 guys that are working consistently, because the director's like, I have a relationship with you, you can get the job done, I trust you.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to hire you over and over again.
So this was on your Wikipedia page, but were you once engaged while you were like, or was it just a girlfriend or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was more like publicity type of thing. So yeah, so I did date her for a long time, and we were two like pretty broken individuals. So
like, we're talking about this like on-set versus off-set thing. So you both are in the industry. And, because you see this, and we talked about the Whatever podcast, but you see like, oh, well, we just have a normal, intimate relationship, like, when we're not doing porn. But so, like, what was that like, actually dating someone that's also doing porn? And then what was the sex like? Like, what was that whole experience like?
Yeah, I think like that was probably like that relationship where, like, gosh, like this individual, so smart, like, brilliant and such a great person, but I think that relationship, so like when you suppress reality, it's going to create chaos in your heart and mind, like, for sure. So what you're saying when you're in the industry is so it's great that we gave the context of the industry being as small as it is, like leading up to this. So if you're in a relationship, what you'd be saying, you're like, most people wouldn't say, I'm just in an open relationship, I don't mind that, my significant other has sex with other people. What you would say was, that's just work, and we're in a monogamous relationship. Like, completely deny.
You'd actually use the word monogamy?
Sure.
Yeah.
Probably you would say, well, we don't have sex with other people.
Yeah.
off camera.
Yeah.
Off camera is the language. So we don't have sex with other people off camera. So because the relationship in our minds was genuine and protected. So you're living in this fictitious reality, but in close enough proximity where you know the person, you know the people who are in the industry, and then a real thing that happened to me often was so if the likelihood of me being friends with the other guys in the industry, we're on set together all the time,
Yeah.
all the stuff, we work for the same companies, so on and so on. So me and my significant other, and then another person and their significant other, we're at dinner, and the probability of him having sex with my girlfriend that week and me having sex with his girlfriend that day, very likely.
Yeah.
And that being the case, and we are just in complete denial that, we work at the same place.
Yeah, the same company.
And we just happened to do a job where we crossed paths that day. And so that's where that was. And I was okay at playing that game. And then the person I was dating wanted to talk about what was happening on set. And that's generally something that we refrained from.
What do you mean,
But
talk about it?
she wanted me to tell me, she wanted it to be a catalyst to enhance our relationship or whatever. She thought it was hot to talk about what she did on set to me, and I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And then again, you go back, growing up in a single parent home with my mom, my identity was, I am my mother's son. So my job in life is to protect her. So if I have growing up in a broken home, having somewhat of a broken view of myself and the world, that led me to being very jealous, very protective of my mom. So that jealousy and the way that I saw the world bled into my relationships. Yeah. So being someone who was very jealous, don't look at my girl, that was me. Don't look at, I'm the guy fighting people in the club because you're looking at my girl dressed half naked. It's what sense does that make? But that's where I was. So that person thinking that way, your girlfriend telling you that they want to talk about the sex they're having with other people in real time.
Yeah.
6 hours ago. For me, I thought, well, either I have to be okay with that, or I'm weak, or there's something wrong with me. So I allowed it, and I had no idea how traumatizing it was going to be.
Did you have to watch? Did you ever watch her scenes or anything like that? No?
No.
I imagine that'd be, based on what you're saying, be painful then.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And there were people who were in relationships or even married in that industry that would do scenes, group scenes with their significant other and another guy.
Yeah.
Or another girl. But yeah.
So you mentioned the group scenes. Did the types of scenes you were willing to do, did that boundary keep getting pushed further and further and further out as the 6 years you were in the industry?
Yeah, I think in a real way, it's once you compromise what you would say yes to, it's just what does it matter? And then the way that you see yourself again. So it's if your yes loses, if your no loses all validity, and you think, well, this is the only thing I can do, and then now your personal life is kind of distorted. Now you're just
Yeah.
whatever. So I think, So, in the same way that the person consuming pornography is cultivating a desire to do something they've never done because now they've seen it for the first time.
Yeah.
The further you go down the rabbit hole of doing those things, the more you leave yourself open to being willing to do things that you said you would never do.
Do you feel as you reflect back on your time and your life, were there like obviously there's the first time doing it, but
Yeah.
then were there like, okay, I broke through another barrier here, I broke through another barrier here. Were there like specific moments, like maybe like the group sex thing you said, but just like, okay, that had never done that before. Now I just did that. But
Yeah, I mean, you're doing like things like where it's like somewhat normative things. I never did any scenes that were like had like violence in them or anything like that. Just my mom was abused, so that was something that was really triggering for me. So that was just like of all the things, that was just like absolute like not okay with. I don't think even if I tried to do them, I don't think I could have like be like aroused enough to complete the scenes. But that was something I didn't do. But, yeah.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about, in I think one of the other podcasts I was listening to, is like the whole kind of straight porn versus gay porn world. And so would you really talk about that like a little bit? Like even venturing into, different types of porn and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was me venturing. So for me, so back then, very different world, So like 2012, it's almost like we were living in a different world. Like I was telling someone recently, it's like, can you imagine someone waking up today from a 10-year coma and like seeing the state of the world? It's just like, is this real life?
Another world,
But in that time, like if you like, there was not like any crossover of like the gay, like it was the gay industry and the straight industry. They were completely separate. Separate studios, separate directors, separate performers. There was no crossover. It was almost like you didn't even know people. Yeah. And like minus AVN, like the big award show where they had the convention, like not the award show, but the convention. So for me, I like pretty much like back in the day, like anyone that was a popular, good-looking straight performer, a gay industry would be like, hey, what would it take, for you to do one scene? Because they knew it would just like sell like crazy. So like how much money would it take for you to do one? So that was something I had in the back of my head. But for me, so that with the person I was dating, like led to like me like really struggling with my mental health. Yeah. Like really struggling and like almost like trying to make a plan of like how to get out. I don't think I ever told anyone this, but I think I even like tried to like see if I could join the military. Yeah. Like I was like, literally what can I do? And I was just like, I got this like CrossFit training certification, and then I was like paying like $20 a class. I was like, what am I gonna do with that? You know? And at this point, I'm making very high six figures. So it's just like, it just does. I was like, how can I get out of this? And I didn't see a way out, and started struggling with my mental health to the point where I'm considering self-harm, and really when I like on the other side of this, like going through counseling, it was really interesting to reflect on this time period of my life. But I made the decision that, I don't want to live anymore. And I can't continue doing what I'm doing anymore. And I could do it. Like, it's so interesting. Like, the worst, like, my mental health ever was also the year I won Performer of the Year. And I think the ability to disconnect was almost advantageous in that. Because I could do anything at any time, anywhere, in front of however many people. Like, nothing mattered. Because I was conditioned to do that. And now I really didn't care. So since there was such a clear-cut line between the two, for guys, like if a guy had done a gay porn 10 years ago and someone knew about it, most of the girls would, if they tried to get into the straight side of things, like most people wouldn't work with them. Yeah. So it made sense in my head. Almost like I'm going to destroy my life. Yeah. And I thought, if I do a gay scene, then I will have to, I won't be able to do what I'm doing now. Yeah. So I will cut myself off from everyone and everything. And
so it was like a self-destructive.
Oh, yeah. 100%. because I couldn't go back. So once you did that, you can't go back.
Yeah.
So even if with me, 1,000 scenes under my belt, performer of the year, you do that, there's no going back. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. So I got all these emails from different companies. I take the largest bidder and I do it. And I didn't know how bad it was going to impact me. And I do that. And then I'm like, well, I can't do the scenes without using Caverjack. So now, like,
What is
there's this Caverjack is essentially like you inject this chemical into, there's 2 canals in your penis, and it's made for like paraplegic people to be able to be intimate with their significant other.
Yeah.
So it's like you inject this chemical, it traps blood in your penis, and it's going to be erect no matter what you do. So that's a common thing that people use in the gay industry. So,
Because not everybody is gay.
well, I would say most people in the gay industry are not gay,
Yeah.
which is insane.
Yeah.
But so I do that, and then exactly what I think is going to happen happens. So I do that. Like literally, my life completely changed, because the directors that were hiring me on a monthly basis, that
On
were
the
my
straight
friends,
stuff,
they were like, dude, are you gay? I'm like, no. They're like, okay, that's weird, and then stop calling, stop texting, and then also, I'm no value to them anymore. So I mean, a lot of you've got relationships that are work relation or like situational relationships. So all of a sudden, outside of like 1 or 2 people, I stopped hearing from anyone. I'm no longer on set with the people that I know. I'm not in the same circles that I'm in. So I just isolate myself completely, and I'm like, okay, it worked. Now what? And then I just kind of stayed in this vortex for like 6 months, and it wasn't as bad because, when I was in the straight side of things, I was working like 20, 25 times a month, and with this, I had a contract, so it's like I had to do 12 scenes within a 6-month period or something like that.
And you would make as much money?
Yeah.
Wow. That is like
Well,
crazy.
it's like I'm literally the
between,
most popular straight star.
Yeah.
And then like I do gay porn, where it's like, it's almost like it's like the unattainable thing.
Yeah.
It's like where like the unattainable thing, or just like, I mean, that's the way that in the industry, like girls no list, like they don't want to do a group scene or doesn't want to do anal or something like that. And it's like, I don't want to do those things. And then the longer they're in the industry, people that have an affinity for that person from a fan base, they want to see them do the thing they haven't done, even if they don't want to do it.
Yeah. And
then so your no is never no. It's how long until you do it, or how much until you do it. And then that, they do the thing that they didn't want to do, and they get, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 to
it's
do
almost like they're rewarded for like
you
the
are
boundary, for violating the boundary.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. I mean, that's the whole point of the industry. But once you do the thing you've never done, and everyone sees you do it, now it's a commonality. Now it's just something you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so you mentioned, the relationships. We talked about romantic relationships. We talked about relationships that produce on the straight side, and then, the gay side of things. I think what's interesting is like you got into porn. Was there like an immediate shift in the real relationships in your life? I'm thinking about like friends, family. Obviously there's so many, I feel like there could be so many complications. Like, how do you like maintain those relationships? What are people saying to you?
Yeah. So when I start doing porn, everyone that I had deep relationships, it was pretty much, this was what happened across the board. Hey, why are you making a decision to do that? Like, you're worth a lot more than that. You could do other things. You're talented. There's other things you can do.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? So when you hear that from someone, I mean, that's the way accountability works. It's like, Matthew, I see you doing something, and that doesn't align with the person I know you to be. why are you doing that?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. You can respond one or two ways. You could say, man, don't tell me what to do, and then you isolate, or we end the friendship that we have. Or you could say, man, you're right. I need to do some introspective work and really take a look at why I'm behaving in a way that is out of alignment with the person I want to be.
Yeah.
And then I change, So what happened was the people who truly cared about me were like, Josh, what are you doing? And my response was, internally, I can't do anything else. You're telling me I shouldn't be doing this. I feel shame. Shame leads to isolation, so I distance myself from you. So very quickly, my stage name was Rocco Reed. So Rocco Reed began to be my identity. And probably the last 18 months I was in the industry, I didn't hear my name.
Yeah.
Because I'd isolated from anyone that truly knew me.
Yeah.
And especially when I went into the gay industry, because when I went into the gay side of the industry, like that 6-month period I was in that industry, everyone that truly knew me, that knew me prior to me being in that industry, that I spent time with outside of the industry, like friends that I had that I went to, basketball games, worked out with, played basketball with, did things like that. All of that stopped. And it was just, I would go to set and do those things, and there was really no connectivity to the outside world.
Yeah.
And that's when I slowly got to a place, and then I did a last scene, and I think it was January of 2013. I did this scene, and I was like, all right, that's it. When I get home, I'm going to take my life.
Yeah, I mean, I want to pause here because, your old Twitter feed with the Rocco Reed is still up there. And, I feel like there's the outside, and then there's, what's actually happening. And so, this is so common with OnlyFans right now.
Yeah.
So, March 26, 2012, another day, this is a tweet, another day of having sex with sexy girls, life is good. And then you wrote in October of 2011, you said, I feel like I'm on top of the world. Life is just about perfect, and I very much look forward to every moment of every day. And so it's like you were saying these things outwardly online, tweeting them.
Right.
But, and you could go on Instagram now, and it seems like, oh, wow, this person's living their best life doing porn right now. But you were going through this, and so what's happening with that outward disconnect with the inward reality, and people actually thinking, no, everything's fine?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a disconnect. I think what happens, I mean, you look at anyone's progressive decline regarding their mental health to the point where they get to a place where they don't think living makes sense. It's you're not trying to manage two personas. You're internalizing everything, and you're trying to manage perception.
Yeah.
And if I manage perception, it's advantageous for me. And that, I mean, that's true. I mean, there's a video that people love to share where I'm on a site, I'm on a website, and I'm asked the question well, are you bisexual? And I'm like, sure. Why? Yeah. And I agreed to it. Wasn't true, but I'm being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by a gay company to have gay sex. So
it helps perception. Yeah, for sure.
It sells the videos.
Yeah.
Do you the Rock sells shampoo now?
Yeah.
Do you think he's using that?
No.
No, he's cashing that check.
Yeah.
He's
bald.
Yeah. He's bald, and he has shampoo products that when I went to Target were sold out.
Yeah.
So if and you could go across you look at the men's physique industry or the bodybuilding industry. Don't believe the lie that your favorite bodybuilder is using the supplements you can find at GNC. Are they taking some protein? Are they taking some of that creatine? Maybe,
juicing, yeah.
But no, not maybe. Not maybe. 1,000%.
Yeah.
They're on steroids. 1,000%.
Yeah.
Not some. All of them are. What you're doing is you're managing perception so that you manage your value externally, so you can extract things that make sense for you in the world. So for me, of course I said that. That's what I was being paid to say.
Yeah.
That's the person I was being paid to be. And at that point in time, like, that was the persona that Rocco Reed had, but that was never me.
Yeah.
But I think there's a real damaging factor to saying things and then them not being true. Because the reality is, I mean, people right now, I love, what I do. OnlyFans models, things like that. Well, look at the mental health crisis. Look like especially like 600 people in the last 20 years who were in the porn industry have died of murder, overdose, or suicide. 33 people that I know personally, like more than this, but people that I knew personally. I spent time with them. We broke bread together. I knew their real first and last names. 33 people overdose or suicide.
There's been a couple in the past month. Too.
Five in the last 3 months. So there's 4, and there's one person that's on life support. Every roommate I've ever had, minus one person, is dead.
Yeah.
And
I think so there's the Adam 22 conversation. I think what's unique about him is, he's a content creator and a YouTuber, and that's what he was doing before. And so he had the No Jumper platform. And then, then he starts, it's like this crossover between the porn world and now we're doing like YouTube podcast content. Yeah. And he has a show called Plug Talk, and he has like basically the porn stars come on the show. They have this whole show, and it's like, it's almost like we're just talking about normal life, and then like we just go on and we do this, and then we broadcast on OnlyFans, and it's like, I think and he could be sitting here right now and being like, I'm living my best life. He might say that, but like, it's just like, it's causing this confusion, I guess, of like, this is so normal. But you've talked about at length, you're like, well, what else would someone say? Like, because if they'd have to admit that this is not great.
Well, I would say, because I mean, if you look at Adam 22, like, he's a creative guy that's really intelligent, and he's fantastic at identifying things that are advantageous for him personally and what would grow his platform. So theoretically, what would be advantageous for me for, like, if I didn't want to do OnlyFans, I could jump in the gaming circuit and I could start streaming on Twitch and start doing things, and I could use my former lifestyle and my former likeness to attract a certain crowd. If my objective in life was to leverage, whatever kind of influence that I had to gain more influence. So I think he's doing the same thing. He had influence, he's got talent and creativity, and he saw something that was normalized. So when you start dabbling in that, you like, it's either I go all in, because if I don't go all in, like, it's going to be even more detrimental to me, because I'm just going to blow up my life. So now I just have to make this part of who I am and what I do. And then you see him, with his significant other, like, buying a Lamborghini to celebrate what they did. But what's also true is, at the end of the day, when you're laying in bed on your back with your eyes closed, like, the influence, the money, the things, none of that matters. All you have is what's true. And I would say, I mean, that's the thing where I know these people. Like, I know the people who are in the industry, and, like, for example, so Kieran Lee, who's a contract guy for the Browsers, he's been in the industry for 20 years. Great friend of mine. We do not see eye to eye often, and we've even had a riff lately. But I mean, his name is Adam, and I love this guy. I love him. He's like so smart, genuine person, has a great family. Love this guy. But I would say at the end of the day, he's like, well, the industry is providing financially for people in a way that they couldn't find the means otherwise, which is a lie. Like, Adam would be successful in anything he's doing because of who he is.
Yeah.
Like, just because he's endowed in that way doesn't mean that's the only thing that he can do. Like, he's successful because of who he is. Like, he's a talented guy. He's got charisma. He's smart. So I would say you would be more successful. Like, if you're in that industry and you're successful, you actually would be more successful doing the thing you actually want to do. And what people find themselves wrestling with is, because I do this, I have to continue doing this.
Yeah.
And there's a real barrier between me and what I wanted to do. So there's the tension of, well, have I disqualified or prevented myself ever from being able to do this thing?
Yeah.
So I now have to say, even if I don't believe it's true, I have to say, I love what I do.
Yeah.
You should do it too, because the most natural thing to do is invite people to where you are.
Yeah.
Even if it's a chaotic space.
Yeah, I mean, the other component of it, right, is like this advertisement. It's, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, there's the get rich quick type of thing, which is just like, there's all these different variations throughout time of like how people feel like they're going to get rich.
People used to rob banks because they didn't think they would get caught.
Yeah, and so like I think the temptation now is like, I listened to a panel with one of the YouTuber Destiny, Adam22, and then Brittany Dylan Moore and somebody from Ediscry, and they're going back and forth on this panel about this subject. And it was just like, oh my gosh, you could just become so wealthy as an 18-year-old, and then you're 20, and then you have like $1 million, and it's like there's this allure of money, which you were getting paid a ton of money to do this, and so that was wrapped up in your story as well, like just making, and it's like this allure of like, I can be 20 years old and rich, or I can just not be rich, and it's like, well, it's better to be rich, and like, at least you'll be rich and miserable rather than like not rich and miserable. It's just like this.
But what happens is when you're rich and miserable, you think that money can buy happiness, and you use it to try to buy things to equate to the feeling that you desire, and all of a sudden the money goes, but the feeling stays.
Yeah.
I mean, that's everyone's story. I mean, that's professional athletes. That's actors' story. That's musicians' story. I make a bunch of money doing something that I was good at, or I had the ability to do because I have certain talents about me. But there's this brokenness inside of me that I'm not really, like, yes, I like what I'm doing while I'm doing it, but I'm not really trying to be good at a craft. I'm trying to fill a void in my life. And when I get the money and I get the fame and I get everything that I thought would fix my life inside, and it doesn't work, I'm stuck trying to manage the perception of how people see me, because the way that people see me is the only thing I have left that satisfies me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't even actually satisfy me. It numbs me.
Well, I think what's interesting about that is because you explain what's actually happening on the set of a porn scene, and a lot of people talk about porn in the sense of like, I'm going to do porn and it's like free sexual expression. But it's not really, because if you're choreographing a scene and it's for the people that are watching and you want them to...
And I would say even it's much worse than that, because like girls get on set and you get this mentality that, well, if there's a video camera and a check, then everything is valid. And there's directors that like, hey, let's go in the back real quick before the scene. I'm going to videotape it. If you want $500 to... an extra $500, we'll do this scene where you perform oral sex on me.
Yeah.
And the girls don't think to say no, and most of the times they don't even use that footage. It's just something they want to do.
Yeah.
And that just becomes a normality on set.
Yeah.
And there's many times where you have to get video consent.
Yeah.
And they would film that prior to. Like, hey, let's go ahead and knock this out while, specifically like to the talent, they would say, hey, while, because, post, you're gonna look all messed up, and if you're taking erectile dysfunction medication, like you're gonna be all blotchy and red and like all disheveled. While you're put together, let's go ahead and do this video where you give consent to everything that just happened, even though it hasn't happened yet. So that whatever I say for you to do because you don't think that you can say no. And on paper, you've already said yes. And on video, you've already said yes. You're gonna be more likely to be okay with things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And that's, people being,
Yeah.
physically harmed and degraded to a degree that causes, I don't want to be too vulgar, but there's these like facial abuse videos where it's very aggressive oral sex with these girls. And if you look at the girls who did those scenes and the lifespan of them, you're talking 75% of the girls that worked in that for a while, dead. And it's like if you subject yourself to that level of degrading behavior, the thought, just the reality that it's going to have a real impact on your mental health.
Yeah. And so, the clocks turn 2013, and obviously this is having like a detrimental effect on your health. And so at this point, you've done 1,000 films. And so that's like, I did the math, that averages out to like 166 films a year, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or was it like more in the later years that you were doing? So it was almost like every day almost that you were, every other day.
Yeah. And on top of that, the industry kind of shuts down in like December, January, because they're the award show, and then everyone's trying to get stuff in for the award show. So really almost in like a 10-month period. But then once I signed the contract for gay films, I think I did maybe like 20-ish films in like a 6-month period, something like that. So. And
how many people have you had sex with at this point, and by 2013, over that 6-year period?
Thousands.
And so when did the kind of suicidal thoughts start? What year?
They started they started the year before I said yes to the gay contract.
Yeah.
And then I thought that would, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what I was thinking. I knew that I wanted to sabotage my career so that I didn't have access to continue doing it. And I thought either I would take my life or somehow find a way out of that industry. And it was worse than I thought. On my mental health. It was one thing doing the scenes, but now you're engaging in gay sex and not being a gay man, and at the end of the scenes, you're literally. So I'm injecting stuff, which I have a hard in that period of my life, unless I was injecting that, I couldn't get an erection because the medication, your body starts to adapt to it. Really struggling with depression, really struggling with my mental health, and then just almost the sickening thing where you're doing this scene with another guy that says that they're straight, and then to finish the scene, the camera's cut and you're both, watching straight pornography, trying to finish, and then you call the director in, and then you do that. Doing that multiple times, it just, really, really, really put me in a place so deep and so dark. I didn't think there was a way out. So made a very strategic plan to take my life.
What thoughts were plaguing you the most at that point? If you were to sit alone in your bed, what thoughts would just come in your head?
I had disqualified myself from everything I ever wanted. I wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be a husband. I wanted to be creative in a way that positively impacted people. I wanted to act. I wanted to create content. I wanted to help people. I wanted to, coach people. I wanted to help people that didn't see themselves as good enough or equipped enough. Just call things out in them and help them get to a place they didn't see themselves capable of, because I had a lot of great coaches and I had a lot of great people in my life, and just helping people strategically get to a place they didn't think they could get to was a passion of mine. And I thought, because of the things I've done, those things are no longer attainable to me.
Yeah.
And the things that I'm most ashamed of are tangibly found for the world to see. So not only have I disqualified myself from attaining those things, the things that I'm most shamed about are on the internet for the world to see. So what's the point?
Do you feel like the emotional decline was gradual, or you feel like at that time it just felt like it just hit you like a ton of bricks?
No, it was gradual. I mean, it was really like an 18-month period.
Yeah.
Where it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And it was almost like I felt tempted to use drugs and alcohol, but in a strange way, I like allowing myself to feel the level of pain and anguish mentally that I experienced. Is almost like I didn't want to numb myself to it. So while I could have numbed myself to the pain, I felt like I deserved it. So I just stayed there.
So you do a final scene in Atlanta and come back to LA, and this is like just such a crazy story with a bank teller of all people.
Yeah.
So can you tell the audience about what happened?
Yeah. So at this point in my life, because again, so when I started doing scenes in the in the gay industry, I was cut off. Well, I mean, part of it was me, but I literally cut myself off to any and everyone that I communicated with.
Yeah.
And like the level of isolation was amplified, where I used to work out with people. I worked out by myself. So literally the only people that I had conversations with were the director of that, the company that I was, because I didn't work for different companies.
No.
Now I only work for one company. So I saw the same people all the time, same director, same camera person. So they both called me Rocco. And then my barber called me Rocco. And then the people that knew me at the gym called me Rocco. And that's really all the places that I went.
So that's who you were, Rocco.
Yeah. So at that point in my life, I'm on a flight back to LAX from Atlanta, and I'm making a very detailed plan of how I'm going to take my life. And I have enough pain medication that I feel like, okay, like I look it up and like that this is the amount. So I go a little bit over that just to make sure. And I segment them in stacks where I know I can swallow this many pills, because I've been, taking like 10, 15 vitamins, a morning my whole life. So like I know how many pills I can swallow without choking. And I wanted to make sure it was a small enough amount of groups that I wouldn't chicken out, because I didn't want to go halfway.
Yeah.
So I set those out, and I was wearing these like linen pants, and I had this check that was in my pocket, and just like it was strange where it had been in my pocket since I left set, and I flew with it in my pocket, and then I'm there. But for some reason, like in this moment, it just becomes like I'm like super aware, like hyper aware of this check, this like payroll check, this folded in half, that's like digging into my skin through these linen pants. And I take it out and I look at it, and I had, an LLC, and it was made out to the LLC, and on the memo, it said what it was for, and it said this like grotesque, name of like, I think it was the website and the act.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't want this to go to waste. And I was pretty sure that, well, if I deposited in my account, whatever's in my account will go to like my mom or something like that. I wasn't exactly sure how it worked, but that's what I assumed. So I just knew that I didn't want this act that I did and the compensation that I received for doing it just to go to waste. So I thought.
Do you remember what the name on the check was? Because I just want the audience to have like the context of what the bank teller is actually seeing. The name of the company?
No, it was like, I don't know. It said like something, it was like some kind of like, I don't know. It was, I don't know.
It was weird?
It was very weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd rather not say.
Okay.
But yeah, just think of the most like grotesque sexual act with multiple people that you can imagine.
Is on this check?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's clear that it's also like for a gay company.
Yeah.
So all these things for me, just like, not something I want to hand to a person.
Yeah.
And but on this day, I thought, well, I will go and hand this to a bank teller because I wanted the bank teller to justify what I thought about myself. So it was like another act, another, example of me being masochistic.
Yeah, self-sabotage, yeah.
Where it's like, I wanted to slide the check across the counter and this person say, "You are disgusting." Mm-hmm. Or whatever. I wanted, I can't believe you. Prostitute, like whatever,
Yeah.
And I go in the bank, and normally I would do like ATM deposit, mobile deposit, Dropbox, whatever. But I walk in, slide the check across the counter, and she asked if I had my account information. Of course, no. And it's like, slide my card, and she pulls up my account, and she's like kind of looking at me, and I'm just waiting on her to look at it and then give me what I was wanting. And then, I'm definitely like pale, like sweating, like trembling.
Yeah.
Moments of taking my life. And she looks at me, and I thought she was about to say something hateful or affirm what I was thinking. And she looks at me and says, "Joshua, are you okay?" Hey, Joshua, how can I help you? And she said that, and I kind of froze for a minute, and it was almost like I heard a stranger's name. And then when she said it the second time, it was like, that's my name.
What was her body language like?
Reserved.
Yeah.
Calm. Like a grandma,
Yeah.
Like when she said, "Are you okay?" She didn't mean like, "Are you okay?" She meant, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And I wasn't. So I heard that, and it almost like shattered this shell that I had, like broke me out of the numbness that I was in. It's almost like I was able to see myself in my state.
Yeah.
And I left the bank, and we didn't really have a conversation. I left pretty abruptly after that, and went back to my place and cried and called my mom. And I hadn't talked to her in a long time.
How long?
Over a year.
You hadn't talked to your mom in a year at this point?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just because, like, the shame.
Yeah.
And also, like, when you're in that period, like, that stage of your life, it's easy to believe, well, even though this person's reaching out to me, it's better if I just distance myself from them because I don't have anything to offer them. So, and then also thinking, well, they're just reaching out to me because they feel bad for me, and they're really ashamed of me and maybe even mad at me. So I don't want to deal with any kind of conflict. So it's better if I just remove my, because really it goes from you thinking, well, I don't have anything to offer, well, you're just talking to me because you feel bad for me, to thinking, well, I don't have anything to offer the world,
Yeah.
so I might as well take my life. It very quickly gets to that place, but
Was she shocked when you called?
yeah, pretty mad. Like mad in a like a righteous way, where her anger was valid, where it's like, she'd been calling and texting me
For the
and I hadn't
past year.
and I hadn't responded. At least once a week, she would call and or text.
Well,
So, and I expected her to say, you're dead to me, or I'm done with you, or don't bother calling, or maybe not even answer.
yeah.
But essentially what she was communicating, you scared me, and I'm so glad you're okay. I love you, and you're so much better than the life you're living. Please come home. So I did. So I quit that day. And it was so interesting that, like, even like the state of my mind, the fact that, again, like so much shame and like so much like caring about perception, where it was like I put out a press release, and in that press release, I told my PR person to say, like, it's such a random thing. It's like, I'm not gay, by the way. Like, what?
In the press release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of like, still, like, I mean,
And this was like I'm quitting this type of press release.
I'm retiring.
Yeah. Yeah, and man, the moment with the bank teller, it's like, I've heard you say this before, but it's like you hadn't heard your real name in so long, and it's like this, and then combined with the thing with your mother, it's like this kind of the seeds of a redemption or turnaround like start to happen, and then you moved home and kind of like sort of living and hiding, and you're working as a trainer, and so like as the story progressed, it seemed like the person in your story that changed everything for you was, what is now your wife, but so you met her and then you asked her out. Can you share about that a little bit?
Yeah. So this is 2 years after leaving the industry. So I'm working in a gym, work my way up in the gym, and essentially do the same thing that I was doing in that industry in a way where I thought, well, if I get enough accreditations and certifications and enough people like me and enough people think I'm good at what I'm doing, I'll feel differently. In a real way, I'm like, well, if I put enough, good dirt on my bad dirt, I won't feel dirty, right?
Yeah.
If I do enough good things, it'll hide the bad things and I'll look like a good person. But I felt the same way. And so 2 years into that, I meet this girl, ask her on a date, try to smooth talk her, and she wasn't having it. And then eventually she agreed to go on this run with me.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go on a date with me, but would go on a run. And we met for a run, and I just thought, man, there was like a litany of people that I hurt, I lied to, I withheld the truth from for 2 years prior. So I was just like, man, I'm just so tired. And also, like, I changed, I covered up my tattoos and like shaved my head and deleted also all of my social media except my Twitter, because I still can't recover that account. I thought I could hide from the world, from myself and everyone I was around, who I used to be, but I couldn't. I mean, it was like literally like day one I'm there. It's like, aren't you that guy? And that sucked.
Like a lot of people just knowing who you were just randomly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was because, so I did a ton of like, so the way that television is now in contrast to 10 years ago, HBO After Dark and Skinamax.
Late night stuff.
Yeah, so I was in all of those movies. So the accessibility to people watching something at 10 o'clock at night on Cinemax or HBO, it's like I'm in most of those movies.
Yeah.
So people like, aren't you that guy? Aren't you that guy? Aren't you that guy? So I couldn't run from the person I used to be, and honestly, I was tired. I was tired of getting found out. I was tired of lying and then getting found out and having to deal with the consequences, or like trying to manage, like, well, I hope they don't find out, you know. But anyway, I was like, hey, look, I'm just gonna tell you everything, and I just, did like a 5-minute monologue of here's every bad thing that I can recall that I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And she was pretty shocked by what she heard.
Like mouth drop, like shocked?
Yeah, like, take a step back, like, and see, it saw like a real like face of like pain, like disappointment maybe. And then she asked, well, are you doing those things now? I said, no, I haven't done anything like that in 2 years. She's like, oh, well, and she was quiet. And then she looked at me and said, well, a person's not defined by the worst thing they've ever done. And they're not defined by the greatest thing they'll ever do. There's a creator outside of time, space, and matter, and he created me and you, and he actually has the final say. He determines who you are. Do you know God? And I, to be honest, I thought, well, I believed that, I believed in the cosmological argument. There was an intelligent designer that had to be the catalyst for time, space, and matter to come into existence at the same time. That made sense to me. And I went to church as a kid, so I believe that I acknowledged that God existed, and that He created everything. Sure. So I was like, well, I know who God is. Yeah, sure. She's like, well, her speaking, she said, I have a relationship with Jesus. And I've been following Jesus since I was in the 7th grade. And my relationship with Him and what the Bible says to be true is the foundation in which I live my life. So what kind of food do you like? It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, why in the world are you interested in me? Because what she did, she challenged the very thing I thought to be most true.
Yeah.
I thought I had invalidated myself. I already felt not valuable because of my childhood. And then I thought I was a bad person because I'd done bad things. She still, while knowing the worst of me, she was still interested in me. It just blew my mind.
Yeah, I think what's so significant is you have these three figures. You have a bank teller, you have your mother, and now what is now your wife. And the through line through those three people is fully known. This lady seeing what's on this check, your mother knowing what you've done for the past 6 years, and now this person that you meet, and they see you in all the dirt and all the mess and all the ugliness, so that you feel like most of society would be like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. But they fully embrace you and accept you and hear that, but then continue pursuing you after that, which is just wild in itself.
And what's so interesting to examine is the conversation that happened with the agent. When I said I wanted to be famous, what I was really saying is I wanted to be seen. Yeah. I wanted to be known. I wanted to feel heard. I wanted to matter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in many ways, if I'm tracking correctly, and you've talked about this a little bit, but her posture towards you, and then these other moments with the teller and your mother, it's you would later known that's kind of reflective of the unconditional love of God. They were expressions of that.
And I think in a real way, it was, I mean, because it's easy to show grace without truth.
Yeah.
And it's easy to share truth without grace.
Yeah.
But she gave me both.
Yeah.
Everything you're saying is not true,
Yeah.
but I care about you. So I love, John Maxwell has this great quote, like, no one cares what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah. That is powerful.
So it's like instantaneous relational equity. It's like I'm going to hear you in a different way because you're not telling me I'm bad, I'm wrong, I should be doing something different. You're saying, hey, I'm going to meet you right where you are, and I think that you matter, and I care about you regardless of what you're doing or how you're living today.
Yeah.
I just want you to know that you have intrinsic value, and I think you are deserving of dignity, and you matter. Because
Powerful.
because I was convinced that I didn't.
So she exposed you to this, and what did you, continue down this kind of spiritual journey? What did you learn about, like, the love of God?
I experienced it. I hear the historicity of Jesus. I hear the eyewitness accounts. I hear all these things that beyond feelings, I felt like there was sufficient evidence for me to believe that Jesus was a real person, that he really walked the earth, that he really died on a cross, and that he really rose from the dead. And if he rose from the dead, that meant something. And I believe that to be true. But was that available to me?
Yeah.
So what I understood in that moment, and what the experience I had with a real living God in that moment, was that he was real and that he loved me. And the Father that I didn't have, that I desperately desired, I had access to. And in spite of all the things I've ever done, the guilt and the shame and all of my mistakes were wiped clean, and it gave me access to love in a way that I'd never experienced, because it broke my heart to the extent where I was capable of receiving love. Because even though my mom loved me, I never was able to accept her love truly. But yeah, so I mean, lots of snot and tears, and when I stood up, I didn't feel ashamed anymore.
It just, like, wiped off of you?
Yeah. I mean, there was significant work that I had to do, significant counseling, significant, changed, I had to change the way that I did community with people. I had to give people access into my life. I had to have people challenge me.
Yeah.
I had to remove toxic behaviors from my life. I had to replace ideologies and lies that I believed to be true with truth. And it was a lot. But for me, in that moment, that day, 9 years ago, like, Jesus saved my life. But me walking out the words that he says is true practically changed my life.
What do you feel like, for someone's watching, they don't believe in God or have some sort of perception about this? Like, what do you feel like people get wrong about God, or maybe what you got wrong about God prior to this whole spiritual journey?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the biggest thing that most people get wrong about God is this belief that either they don't need God, or they've disqualified themselves from God. And it's born into our heart to desire approval and acceptance.
Yeah.
But if we can understand that we were actually created to operate from acceptance, in contrast to for acceptance, because you're running a rat race that's never going to end. But another way to live, the way that I believe we were designed to live, is from the place that there is a intelligent designer that created all things and a way he intended them to live. And because of sin, that distorted our perception of ourselves and him, and that puts us in this chaos. But he's full of grace, mercy, and he's good, so he creates a solution to come out of that chaos, being his son. So he sent Jesus into the world to do the thing we couldn't do, to live the life we couldn't live. But what that does in your life practically is it allows you to understand that you were made for more.
Yeah.
You were made for more, and what you're doing, trying to strive, to make the money, to make yourself known, to do the things. The reason it doesn't work is because you don't have the thing that you need most.
That's so good. Yeah, I think it's so remarkable what you encountered and what you found, and I think people naturally become curious of sometimes there's like a bow put on the stories, of like a happily ever after type of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that could be deceiving to people because it's not rooted in reality. And so you had this moment, this grace, this love that overcame you, and it just completely wrecked and changed your life. But then there was like the 9 years that have like happened after that.
Yeah.
And so, what were the biggest things that you felt like you struggled with after this?
Yeah, I mean, the reality of, while I have this relationship with Jesus and this new journey I'm on, I still have the baggage of my past, which in my case is tangibly found by the world. So, people are mean, people are malicious. So I'm now out of the industry, sharing about how I found the thing the industry couldn't give me, and how the industry, not the people, but the industry, is toxic and leads to feelings of hopelessness and is detrimental for people's mental health because you're living in a way that is contradictory to the way that you're designed to live. You're abusing and you're abusing intimacy in a way, and you're allowing value to be extracted from you, and you're doing things where you're suppressing reality, and it's causing real destruction in your life. And to an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old that's doing it and making a lot of money, while you might make a lot of money today, well, what about the destruction that it's going to cause tomorrow? What about the way that it impacts the people that you say you love most? What about the way that it's going to impact your mental and emotional health moving forward? What are you going to do when you try to have some kind of normality, to your life, some normalcy to your life removed from that? Because the reality that you're going to do this forever, it's not viable. It's not.
Yeah.
No one can do that. So you often don't think about, well, now what?
Yeah.
Because the now what is, I've done something that's created a wound in my mind and my heart, and it's going to impact me and everyone around you, because it's going to touch the people you care most about. It's going to hurt the most.
Yeah.
So that has been true. I mean, I'm going to have a very uncomfortable conversation with my 4 boys one day that will be a life lesson, but it will most likely hurt them.
Yeah.
People say, and send my wife hurtful things. I've started
videos and stuff.
Sure. Well, the day that our the day that we got pregnant for the first time, I announced that on Facebook. Like, we just found out we were having a baby, you know, and someone created a fake account, and I assume they used some kind of bot or something, because they sent my pornography to every single person that my wife was friends with on Facebook. So her mom, dad, sister, brother, grandparents. She's a teacher, so any and everyone you could think of. And, you know, every business I've launched, like we launch a new, you know, Facebook page, it gets plastered with pornography, you know. But like that's not like my current state today.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm not as relevant or at all like in the porn industry anymore. You know, it's been it's been, you know, 11 years since I've been in the industry. So like outside of a stupid meme, it's like I'm not even like relevant like in that space. So I don't face as much pushback as I used to, but there's still people that, you know, see me in the light in which I used to be, where they'll ask like, hey, can I pay you to send me a photo, or can I see this or that? And it's like, you only ask that because you see people the way you see them, and you see me as who I used to be. So I mean, that has a real cause and effect on my life that people probably don't weigh going into it. But yeah, on the other side of that, it's like I've had to do a lot of hard work, and really, like my book's not like my story.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, there's aspects of
Your
my
story
story
in it,
in it, but it's really like, here's, you know, the pain that thinking that you can earn your worth, and here's the pain that causes in your life, and here's some healing that I've discovered. Here's what believing that you can find true intimacy in objectifying yourself and having intimate relationships, and even consuming pornography. If you think you can find intimacy there, you're going to find yourself lonely and frustrated and broken, because intimacy is not found in that place. So I mean, that's really what the book's about. It's like 7 lies that'll ruin your life. It's if you believe a lie to be true.
Yeah.
It's true to you, and through that lie you see the world, and you see relationships, you see intimacy, you see satisfaction, happiness, all these things. And if you try to pursue something that's not real, you're going to end up empty-handed.
You mentioned the word intimacy. I mean, I'm curious, like, we talked at length about how being in porn caused you to view sex, and just like the choreograph, robotic nature of it. You know, you meet your wife, you know, you got married. Do you feel like there were any long-term consequences of that? Like in terms of now kind of building yourself back up and having sex more in a proper function of like what it was made for?
Yeah, I would say, because but I mean, to your language, to use your language, sex was never meant to be a function. It was always meant to be an experience.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I have a biblical worldview. So having a biblical worldview, I view sex as something that exists. It's something to exist within marriage. So it exists within marriage because it's the ultimate experience of connectivity and intimacy.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the embodiment of love. And for me, I'd never experienced love. I'd only experienced lust.
Yeah.
And once I experienced what love was, it's kind of neat because it points back to the bank teller.
Yeah.
Where a bank teller can identify fraudulent currency not by seeing every piece of, you know, counterfeit currency. They become very familiar with what's real.
Yeah.
And when you know what is real, it's so much easier to identify what's not.
Yeah.
And once I experienced love for the first time, it was not even close to anything else I've ever experienced before.
That's so good. I wanted to kind of close on like, you're now 9 years kind of into this journey, and I think that there's like so much hope in the sense of like, if someone's currently in this right now, that it's not the end, and that there's like so much redemption, and that all the things that they believe will happen if they stop, or it's not true, and that there's like another pathway. So first I wanted to kind of address like, what would you say to someone who thinks they can't make a life for themselves even if they were to quit, like that this would permanently be on their record, and even hearing something like their videos being sent to their future spouse's parents and stuff like that? And
I mean, I would say I love sharing my story because you're not going to find a more extreme example than me. It's like I did 1,000 porns. I did both straight and gay. I did, escorting. I mean, everything under the sun. I did. Everything that could cause shame regarding sex, I've done. And most of it is tangibly found on the internet. So I would say to the person that believes that they've ruined their life beyond repair, you're just wrong. And that's a beautiful truth. That I'll share a story, and then I'll answer it. But so when my wife and I, we were going through premarital counseling, we were talking about different love languages, and most people gravitate towards interacting with people or loving people in the way that they naturally receive love. So if mine is like words of affirmation, personal touch. So often the way that we feel things, it's natural for us to want to reciprocate those things in good faith, in thinking that I'm loving you well. But my wife's number one love language is quality time. And what I had to realize was that it wasn't a quality meal. It wasn't a quality restaurant. It wasn't a quality gift. The greatest thing I could give her was my presence. And that was hard. Because I didn't feel like I was worth anything. And for her to look me in the eye and say, the greatest thing that you can give me is you, changed my life. Because she loved me in a way that allowed me to love myself. So I would just say to the person that has deemed their life beyond repair, or has seen, man, there's nothing I have to give. There's nothing left I have to give. I'm because of the things I've done, I have this theoretical scarlet letter on myself, and I could never do anything. I literally wrote on a piece of paper the reasons I want to die. I still have it. The reasons I want to die. I will never be a husband. I will never be a father. I will never contribute to the world in a way that leads to positive change. I have all those things. I do all those things. So to the person believing that they want to give up because they've ruined their life, you matter, and what you do and who you are not one and the same. And regardless of what you've done or where you've been or what's happened to you, whether it was your fault or maybe someone did something to you that hurt you, that caused you to see yourself in a light that led to you opening yourself up to being hurt, or maybe led to a series of decisions that you regret. Hope is available to you. Life is available to you, and you are worth so much more than you realize. Because I believe every single person was created with gifts and talents to contribute to the betterment of the world. And if you're not using those, there's going to be this feeling of, what is my purpose?
Yeah.
Who am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? And it's because you're not doing the things that you were created to do. And ultimately, there's a person that you need to know that you don't, that knows you best, that loves you, that created you, and that has made the ultimate sacrifice so that you can know him not only now, but forever.
That's so good. Yeah. And then, that's such a powerful word for somebody that feels shame or feels like they can't make their life for themselves. And then kind of finally, what would you say to someone who maybe isn't even at that point of realization right now? They could be doing OnlyFans. They could be, quote unquote, living their best life or whatever they're doing right now. What would you say to that person?
I would say, are you living your best life in contention to who you want to be? Or have you believed that you need to live someone else's life so you can obtain the joy that you think they have? I think there's so many people that disqualify themselves from so many great things because they believe that they don't have intrinsic value, and they believe the lie that, well, if my life mirrors someone that I look up to that has something that I want, if my life looks like that, I'll feel different. But it doesn't work. It never works, and it always ends in pain and frustration. And maybe you're on the high of having more money than you've ever had, or feeling seen, but man, having followers on social media and people that have an affinity for you because of what you do is not the same as people knowing you. Like, you're being seen and truly being fully known are very different, and your heart will continue to be hungry to be known, no matter how many people know who you are.
Yeah. So good. Thank you for coming out here to New York. I just really enjoyed this conversation, and I think it's just gonna help a lot of people. And so I just appreciate your time here.
Oh,
traveling
absolutely.
out.
Yeah, glad to be here. Love your guys' content.
Yeah, thank you.